The knife didn't slide across my chest. It twisted. We only answer to our real dad, not the guy who plays house. That's what my son, well, I thought he was my son, said to my face. With his mouth full of the roast chicken I spent 2 hours making. My mother's recipe. Her last one, scribbled in pen on a faded index card with a coffee stain in the corner. I'd laminated it. I don't even laminate my tax documents, but that card was sacred. And now it tasted like ash. Their mother, Natalie, snorted. Like it was funny. She leaned back in her chair, wine glass in hand, and didn't say a word in my defense. Didn't blink. Just smirked. Like she was watching a sitcom rerun she knew the punchline to. 18 years. 18 birthdays. Broken arms, broken hearts, algebra homework, dental bills, speech therapy, 2 dogs, 1 buried, 1 still limping. I paid for it all. I showed up. I was the emergency contact. The school committee volunteer. The coach. The chauffeur. The idiot. I didn't yell. Didn't throw a plate. I stood up. Quietly. Wiped my hands on the dish towel. Walked to the sink. Placed the towel down. Picked up my phone. As I stepped outside, the porch light buzzed above my head. Burn out again. I looked at it for a moment, half smiling. That bulb was always mine to replace. Just like the clogged gutters, the busted thermostat, the morning tantrums, the college applications. Mine. Not theirs. Certainly not his. I scrolled. Found the number. Press call. 1 ring. 2. Hello. Derek. It's Grant. Listen carefully. I heard a laugh on his end. Of course he laughed. What is this, man? You finally growing a pair? I ignored that. As of this moment, I'm formally renouncing guardianship. Legally, the paperwork is already notarized. You'll be receiving notice within the hour. You have 24 hours to assume custody. Your children, your responsibility. Starting now. The line went silent. Wait. What the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about receipts, tax filings, medical authorizations, 18 years of documentation, every signature, every dollar. Every one of your parental responsibilities that I absorbed while you vanished. You're done hiding, Derek. Congratulations on your re-entry into fatherhood. He started to shout. That's when I hung up. Back inside, through the kitchen window, I saw Natalie's phone buzz. Her eyes lit up. She held it up so the twins could see. Look who's calling, she grinned. She answered, still grinning. And then I saw it. The moment the voice on the other end started screaming. The color drained from her face like someone had unplugged her from the wall. Her smile crumpled like tinfoil. She stood up so fast the chair tipped. What? Wait. What do you mean he can't? Wait, stop yelling. I didn't stay to listen. I walked down the porch steps. Slow. The street was quiet, lit only by the orange glow of the neighbor's floodlight. I felt the evening breeze against my cheek. Cool. Crisp. I hadn't really felt it in years. Not like that. My keys were in my pocket. My bag was already in the trunk. Documents? Filed. Copies sent. Clauses activated. Signatures time-stamped. I wasn't bluffing. And before we go any further, if you've ever felt like this, used, dismissed, erased, do one thing for me. Tap that follow. More than 90% of you listening haven't subscribed yet, and trust me, stories like this, they're just the tip of what we've got planned. It helps the team keep going, and it tells us you're one of us. Back to Natalie, still inside. She was pacing now. One of the boys followed her, holding his phone, probably calling me. My phone buzzed once. Then again. Blocked. They wanted a show of rage. A scene. They got silence. They got the man they took for granted finally walking away without a backward glance. Not because I hated them. Because I'd already done the math. The cost-benefit analysis. The emotional accounting. And I was done footing the bill. Natalie was humming. Actually humming. Like she hadn't just watched the man who raised her kids walk out into the night without a single word to them. She leaned against the counter in her bathrobe, sipping her overpriced single-origin coffee with that same smug expression she wore when she won arguments by simply refusing to acknowledge them. He always folds, she said, shaking her head at the twins, who were scrolling through their phones again. Trust me, he's just dramatic. He'll be back by lunch. The boys didn't even respond. One muttered something about grabbing Pop-Tarts. The other grinned and said, I bet he's sitting in the car crying. Natalie chuckled into her mug. Let him cry. Maybe he'll finally learn we don't chase tantrums. But Grant wasn't crying. He wasn't sitting in the car. He was already 22 miles across town, in a private law office that overlooked the courthouse plaza. He sat alone in a conference room lined with books that hadn't been touched in years. The attorney across from him, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a sharper-than-average sense for pettiness, opened a large manila envelope sealed in wax. It had been prepared months ago. Inside, a notarized revocation of legal guardianship, citing breach of good faith familial conduct. A certified financial summary of child support paid over 18 years, cross-referenced with income declarations from the biological father. A motion to reallocate financial obligations retroactively, naming both Natalie and Derek as jointly liable. And most important, a custody reassignment clause buried in an old refinance agreement Natalie signed without reading. The clause was cold, precise. In the event the minor dependents knowingly and repeatedly engage in psychological hostility toward the guardian, with the consent or inaction of the biological parent, said guardian may terminate legal obligations and request reassignment of custodial responsibility to the biological father within 48 hours. Her signature was on it. Twice. Once in ink. Once digitally. Grant didn't look triumphant. He looked exhausted. "You sure you want to go through with this?" the lawyer asked, flipping pages with thin, steady fingers. "Because once it starts, there's no pause button, and they will fight you. Hard." "I'm not fighting," Grant said quietly. "I'm done participating." The lawyer nodded. "All right. We'll file electronically within the hour. I'll personally walk it to the clerk's desk after. You'll get the confirmation and timestamp before noon." Back at the house, Natalie was already calling her sister, laughing about how Grant's probably off sulking like a teenager, and that he always makes everything about him. She didn't even notice that his car hadn't returned, or that his shaving kit was gone from the bathroom, or that the garage door panel had been unmounted and left on the workbench. She didn't notice because she wasn't looking. Grant had stopped reacting years ago. She mistook that for weakness. She called it tolerance, thought it made her the strong one. But while she was congratulating herself for winning another imaginary power play, Grant's legal team was already queuing the filing to the family court portal. The same portal that would soon notify Derek, who, as of that morning, would receive a formal request to assume primary custody of the twins he hadn't seen since they were in pull-ups. And unlike Grant, Derek couldn't say no without consequences. Because Grant wasn't just walking away. He was shifting the weight. Deliberately. Legally. And not a single person in that kitchen had the slightest clue. Natalie poured herself another cup. "Honestly," she said to no one in particular, "he should be thanking us. We made his life interesting." A beat later, her phone buzzed. Court clerk. Notification pending. Still, she didn't look. Because Natalie always thought storms gave you warning. Thunder. Flash. Sirens. She never expected the kind that hits you in the morning, wearing a robe, holding a coffee mug, convinced the sky is still blue. The first time I heard it, it wasn't even meant for me. 2 years ago. A lazy August evening. The kind where the air feels heavy but the silence hangs heavier. I had just come back from a late grocery run. Milk, paper towels, some allergy meds for one of the boys. As I parked and walked up the driveway, I heard them, both of them, on the back porch, talking to one of their friends on speakerphone. They didn't hear me approaching. "He's not our real dad," one of them said, laughing. "Yeah," the other one chimed in. "He's just good for cash. Mom says so too. He's basically a wallet with legs." They all burst into laughter, the friend included. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just stood there behind the hedges like a burglar who had picked the wrong house. Or maybe the right one. The house I'd been paying for since they were in diapers. The one I'd renovated, repainted, remortgaged for them. So Natalie could stay home that 1 year. So the twins could get braces. So we could go to Disneyland when they were 9. I had canceled my trip to see my dying aunt that summer so the twins wouldn't miss it. A wallet with legs. I turned back to the car, got in, and drove 2 blocks away. Just parked. No radio. No lights. No crying. I sat there and stared at my own hands. These were the same hands that carried them to bed, that taught them to ride bikes, that wrote endless emails to teachers, that unclogged the sink at 2 a.m. when someone flushed a toothbrush. Again, they had no idea I'd heard them, and I didn't tell them, because this wasn't about rage. This was data. That night, I returned home, told them I had a headache, and went straight to the upstairs office. Opened the drawer, the one I kept locked. Inside was a red folder labeled Plan C, the one I started 6 years ago when Natalie first spat the phrase, "Don't forget, you're not their real dad." Derek could come back anytime if I wanted him to. That was the night I began consulting a very specific type of attorney. Not a divorce lawyer. Not yet. An estate strategist. He was the one who helped me draft the updated guardianship documents, the ones Natalie had signed during the 2018 refinance paperwork, when we needed to take out a second mortgage for the boys' private school fees. buried in the third subclause of the amendment, Clause 4C. In the event of confirmed emotional contempt, public disparagement, or hostile coercion by the minor dependents, and in the absence of reasonable parental correction, the guardian shall have the right to initiate a full and final legal renunciation of guardianship. Custodial responsibility shall, under this clause, revert to the biological parent of record within 48 hours of notice. It was airtight and cold. That was the point. Natalie never read it. She signed every page while yelling at the cable company about a dropped signal. It was page 47 of 72. Initialed and dated. Notarized. The clause sat dormant for years. Until that moment. Until that sentence. He's just good for cash. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was heartbroken. That happened a long time ago. That night, I did math. 18 years of receipts. From immunizations to orthodontics. From swim lessons to summer camps. The $1,200 I sent when they wrecked their laptop on a school trip. The tuition deposits. The birthday parties where I stood behind the camera instead of in the pictures. They had never seen me as a father. Not really. Not once. That night, I accepted it. And once I accepted that truth, everything else became logistics. I emailed the lawyer. Subject line. Clause 4C, preparation timeline. No emotion. No long explanations. He responded the next morning. Acknowledged. All documents will remain in draft until activated. I filed away the confirmation. Then I made waffles for the boys. They didn't notice I didn't smile once. They didn't notice anything at all. Derek answered the call like it was a joke. Grant. Man, I haven't heard from you since what Little League? He was in the middle of cleaning out his garage. The kind of half-assed spring cleaning that involved opening a few boxes, sneezing at the dust, then cracking open a beer. Derek hadn't had real contact with the twins since they were 8, maybe 9. He couldn't remember. He still referred to them as the boys when speaking about them, mostly because he could never tell them apart in photos. He paced past his rusted-out lawn mower, earbuds in, toned smug. So what's this about, huh? You miss my charming personality. He chuckled, already halfway dismissing whatever came next. Grant didn't laugh. I'm calling to inform you that, effective immediately, I've renounced guardianship. All rights and responsibilities related to the twins now revert to you, their biological father. Legal notice is en route. You have 24 hours to assume physical custody or initiate a formal objection through family court, though I wouldn't recommend it. Derek stopped mid-stride. You're serious? I'm beyond serious. I've sent notarized revocation documents to the court. You'll receive a copy shortly via email and certified mail. As of 9/12 this morning, I am no longer their legal guardian. If you fail to comply, I'll be filing for retroactive child support, dating back to 2007, based on Natalie's financial inactivity and your non-involvement. I have statements, documents, even photos that detail neglect. One from the year she left them in the car for 3 hours while getting her nails done. That alone could land you both in a family court spotlight I doubt you can afford. Silence. Derek's jaw flexed, hand tightening around a greasy screwdriver. You're bluffing. I'm not, Grant said flatly. Check your email. There was a ping. Derek opened his inbox, eyes scanning the subject line. Legal guardianship termination. Court notice filed, immediate custody required. Attachments, for PDFs. Each one sealed, signed, backed by a firm Grant had clearly been working with for months. Maybe years. Derek's smirk faded. He opened the first document. There it was, his name, bold, all caps, listed under biological parent, custody reinstatement recipient. The revocation was legally flawless. You can't do this, Derek muttered, voice lower now. I already did. But I don't have room. I'm not even in town most weekends. I work second shift, Grant. I'm not a damn daycare. That's not my concern anymore, Grant replied. They're your sons. Always have been. Time to prove it. Click. The call ended. For 3 long seconds, Derek stood frozen in his cluttered garage. Then he exploded. He threw the screwdriver into the drywall hard enough to leave a dent. Stumbled over a tire jack. Cursed loud enough to wake a dog 2 houses down. He grabbed his phone and hit Natalie's number. She answered on the second ring, chipper as ever. Derek, what the hell did you sign? He bellowed. He's got everything, Natalie. Legal documents, time-stamped files, evidence. He's dumping the kids on me. Wait, what? No. He's just mad. He's bluffing. He emailed me court filings. I am legally liable, you idiot. Natalie's voice faltered. What are you talking about? I'm talking about 18 years of child support backlog and a custody transfer that's already been filed. You absolute moron. He hung up without waiting for her response. Natalie stood in the kitchen, phone still pressed to her ear, slowly lowering it as the words sank in. Across the room, the twins were watching YouTube, oblivious. She stared at them, then at her phone, then at the front door. No car in the driveway. No Grant. Just consequences. Real ones. For the first time since the dinner, she felt something sharp twist behind her ribs. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Natalie stormed into the law office like she owned the building. The receptionist barely had time to look up before Natalie barked out the name of their old attorney, Daniel Croft, the man who handled their estate planning back when she still wore her wedding ring and referred to Grant as my rock, instead of the guy who won't stop moping. Croft's office hadn't changed in the last 15 years. Same framed Princeton diploma behind his head. Same leather-bound books no one had opened since Bush was in office. Same faint scent of printer toner and old money. But the man sitting behind the desk looked different. Tired. A little slower. And completely unsurprised to see her. "Natalie," he said, not standing. "What a morning." She dropped into the chair. No greeting, no small talk. "This is insane," she spat, tossing a sheaf of printouts onto his desk. "He's trying to dump them on Derek. He's trying to make it all legal. You need to stop this. Now." Croft glanced at the papers, calmly flipped through them. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a worn client folder with her name on the tab. He laid it next to the documents she'd brought. "It's already legal," he said. "And he's not trying anything. This was triggered by you, Natalie. And them." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" He turned the page. "Clause 4C. You signed this on April 11th, 2018. And again during the 2020 refinance. Both times with witnesses. Both times notarized. It clearly states that verbal abuse or public humiliation by the dependents, if met without corrective parental action, nullifies guardianship. Emergency custody reverts to the biological parent within 48 hours of notice." She scoffed. "That clause is buried in legalese. I didn't know what I was signing. That's coercion. Mental distress." Daniel didn't even raise an eyebrow. He leaned back, fingers steepled. "You laughed, Natalie," he said quietly. "When they called him fake. When they said he was just a wallet with legs. You didn't intervene. You joined in. And the statute makes it clear. Emotional hostility met with parental complicity qualifies." She opened her mouth, closed it again. He continued. "We also have the email chain. You were CC'd on the 2021 amendment review. You replied with, and I quote, 'Just sign whatever he needs. I don't have time for this today.'" Her face went pale. "You knew what this was. Or at least, you should have." She stood abruptly. "I want to file a reversal. I want to contest." "You can try," he said, unbothered. "But he's already filed with the family court. Derek's attorney has acknowledged receipt. They've started negotiations for temporary physical custody. If you want to fight this, you'll be fighting both of them." That landed hard. "You're saying Derek's working with Grant?" Croft shrugged. "More like trying to limit the damage. From what I hear, he's not exactly thrilled either." Natalie pulled out her phone and dialed Grant. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. And again. Nothing. Blocked. She slammed her phone on the desk. "He's abandoning them." Croft didn't blink. "No. He's exiting a contract you both treated like a doormat." Big difference. Across town, Derek was in a different office. Smaller, messier. His lawyer was a graying man with thick glasses and a permanently annoyed expression. "Let me guess," he muttered, flipping through Grant's filings. "They thought he was too passive to actually pull the trigger." Derek grunted. "They thought he wouldn't do it. Well, he did. And frankly, I'd rather negotiate terms now than get dragged into a courtroom where a judge sees that clause and the photos. The one with the boys left at the rec center? That's damning." Derek rubbed his temples. "What the hell do I do now? You either accept temporary custody and show good faith, or you risk the court appointing a third party, and trust me, they'll come with strings. Supervision, financial obligations, probably therapy requirements. You want that?" "No," Derek muttered. "Then we negotiate. Fast." Back in Daniel Croft's office, Natalie sat slumped in the chair like someone had turned the oxygen off. "I didn't think he'd do this," she whispered. Croft offered no comfort. He simply picked up his pen, tapped the document again, and said flatly, "Then you shouldn't have signed it." It started with a beep. A short, shrill denial from the card reader at the bank. "Try it again," Natalie said, forcing a smile at the teller. The woman glanced at the screen. "I did. Twice." Natalie slid over another card. "Platinum. Unlimited, in theory. Use this one." Beep. Declined. The teller's polite mask cracked slightly. Do you have another method of payment? I am the method, Natalie snapped, snatching her cards back. There's clearly a banking error. The mortgage auto-pay must have hit early. But something in her gut knew better. Still, she left the bank with a practiced strut, pretending not to notice the sympathy glance from the manager by the door. Back in the SUV, hers, or so she thought, she called the financial advisor she hadn't spoken to in months. The one Grant hired when they were optimizing assets. Hi, this is Natalie Whitaker, she said with faux breeziness. I'm trying to get clarity on our mortgage account. I think there's been a hold or something. A pause. I'm sorry, the assistant said, but I no longer see your name authorized on that file. Natalie's voice dropped. Excuse me. That mortgage was transferred into a limited holding trust 2 months ago. The signatory is Grant Whitaker. It was part of the refinancing restructure after the asset consolidation. Her ears rang. What trust? I'd be happy to have Mr. Whitaker's counsel reach out to you directly. She hung up. The SUV's engine hummed softly beneath her. She stared at the steering wheel. The tan leather had a scratch on the top left from when one of the boys slammed his backpack into it freshman year. The scent of stale fries and old perfume clung to the air vents. She pulled down the visor, opened the registration flap. Her name wasn't on the lease. Just his. She slammed it shut. A text from the twins lit up her screen. Mom, the internet's off. She blinked, tapped into the app. The account was gone. The utilities, too. Everything had been rerouted. Water, electric, streaming services, even the Spotify family plan. She scrolled in a frenzy, realizing she had no idea how any of it worked. Grant had always handled that stuff. She used to mock him for it, called him the household IT guy, said it made him feel manly to click buttons and set passwords. But now it felt like she was floating in someone else's house, where everything was in his name. She opened the twins' college fund dashboard. She hadn't checked it since they applied. Session expired, it said. She logged in, or tried to. Account closed. Funds dispersed. The last movement had been 3 weeks ago, to a new structure titled GW Irrevocable Educational Trust. Not a single cent was accessible. And the beneficiary fields? Blank. She called the advisor again. Straight to voicemail. She called Grant. Still blocked. She tried to log into the shared cloud drive they used for taxes. Access denied. She opened her own email. A cascade of failed logins and notices flooded in. Subscription canceled. Card declined. Payment method removed. Even her gym membership had bounced. She drove home with numb fingers, not remembering a single turn she took. Inside, the twins were arguing about who used the last of the cereal. One of them looked up. Why isn't the heat working? She didn't answer. Instead, she went to the bedroom and opened the closet. Half his clothes were gone. The cufflinks box was empty. The safe was locked and reset. She walked to the mirror and stared at herself. All these years, she'd convinced herself she was in control, that she held the power because she had the mouth, the presence, the will. But it was all an illusion, a stage. Grant had been the scaffolding, and now he'd pulled every beam, board, and brace out from under her, quietly, methodically, like a man dismantling a set after the show's final curtain. Nothing had been hers. Not the house, not the car, not the plan, not even the kids, anymore. She sat down on the edge of the bed and whispered, "What the hell did I do?" The only answer was the low creak of a heating system that no longer belonged to her. The email arrived at 7:06 a.m. Subject line, Formal Custody Transfer, Whitaker Twins. From Whitaker Legal Representation. CC, Family Court Clerk, Derek Allen, Biological Father. Office of Child Welfare. Natalie opened it while still half asleep, bleary-eyed and holding a cup of black coffee she hadn't even sipped. She expected another bluff, another warning shot, some pathetic plea for attention. But as her eyes scanned the email, the air caught in her throat. It was real. A stamped, signed, court-submitted notice. The legal handover of physical custody to Derek Allen, effective pending review, but backed by emergency transfer authorization per Clause 4C. She read it again, then again. Attached was the judge's preliminary acknowledgement, and a short, polite statement from Derek's lawyer confirming that he was willing to assume temporary custody of his sons effective immediately, per the emergency clause initiated by Mr. Whitaker. Natalie dropped her coffee. The mug shattered across the kitchen tile, sending a spray of ceramic and caffeine under the fridge. From the living room, "Everything okay?" one of the twins called out. She didn't answer. She was already on the move, storming down the hallway, flinging open the door to the den where both boys sat in front of the TV, gaming controllers in hand, mouths full of cereal they hadn't even bought. She didn't care which one she yelled at first. Maybe both. Call him, she screamed. Right now? You call him, and you apologize. I don't care what you say. Tell him you didn't mean it, that you were joking, that you love him. The boys blinked. One dropped his controller. Wait, what's going on? He's gone, she snapped. He handed you off like dry cleaning. You want your real dad? Well, congratulations. He's coming to pick you up, and he's not bringing snacks or a PlayStation. The older twin, just by 2 minutes, pulled out his phone. He dialed. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Blocked. The younger one followed suit. Same result. Blocked. Mom, he said, voice suddenly quieter. He really blocked us? Her eyes flared. Yes, because you idiots couldn't keep your mouth shut. You sat there laughing at the man who paid for your teeth, your school, your vacations, your lives. And now he's done. Do you understand that? Done. They didn't answer. One of them opened Instagram. Grant's profile? Deactivated. They tried email. Undeliverable. The line went dead in every possible way. The living room suddenly felt colder. Quieter. Like the silence had mass. For years, the twins had tossed around the phrase real dad like a get-out-of-grounding-free card. Something to say when Grant told them no, or asked them to do something uncomfortable, or made the crime of existing without DNA that matched theirs. Now their biological father, Derek, was legally in charge. And he was on his way. The same Derek who forgot their birthdays. Who once brought home gas station cupcakes and thought that counted as a celebration. The man who skipped every parent-teacher conference and blamed traffic from 3 states away. You think this is a joke? Natalie spat. You think life's just gonna snap back? Grant doesn't yell. Grant doesn't fight. But when he leaves, he leaves. The boys sat down. Hard. The TV was still on, some dumb action movie playing in the background. Explosions. Sirens. None of it louder than the quiet realization blooming in their chests. He blocked us, the younger one said again, like he couldn't believe it. The older twin rubbed his face, suddenly pale. We didn't mean it. Natalie laughed bitterly. Yes, you did. And so did I. They all sat in silence for a moment. No one moved. Then her phone buzzed. Derek. She answered, heart racing, while rising. You home, he said. Yes, she replied flatly. Be there in 20. Got stuff to sign. Click. No hi. No how are they? No fake attempt at charm. Just cold logistics. Just like Grant. Natalie stared at her reflection in the black TV screen. And for the first time in 18 years, she felt the full weight of what it meant to be the only adult in the room, with no one left to pick up the pieces. The cafe was neutral ground, Grant's choice. Not their home. Not her lawyer's office. Just a quiet place halfway between 2 freeways, with chipped mugs, a broken ceiling fan, and a waitress who didn't care who anyone used to be. He picked it for a reason. Nothing sentimental. Nothing familiar. Just a place to end things without drama. Natalie arrived late, of course. Hair pulled back too tight. Jacket too expensive for someone who no longer owned anything. Grant was already seated at a corner booth, sipping water, a thick manila envelope resting on the table in front of him like a loaded weapon. He didn't look up as she approached, just stared through the window at the parking lot, where a dead tree cast crooked shadows on a cracked curb. She sat across from him, exhaling too hard, like she was trying to turn herself into a victim before the conversation even began. They're devastated, she said, voice trembling in just the right register. You blocked them, Grant. You blocked kids. He still didn't look at her. They were kids, she repeated. They didn't mean it. Grant turned his eyes to her. Calm. Dry. As unreadable as ever. They're 18. Her mouth opened. Closed. She hadn't prepared for that response. He finally spoke again. When I was 18, I was working 2 jobs to afford night school. And they were mocking the man who paid for their education while scrolling TikTok at the table I built. They're not kids. They're replicas of their environment. Natalie flinched like he'd slapped her. I raised them better than that, she said weakly. He reached into the envelope and pulled out the first folder. Slid it across the table. Inside, receipts. Stacked chronologically. Meticulously labeled. Tuition payments, school supplies, doctor visits, dental surgeries, therapy sessions, braces, broken screens, sports fees, plane tickets, textbooks, birthday parties, lost luggage, asthma medication. Thousands of entries. Each one with his name on the line. No cosigner. No shared accounts. Just Grant. They never asked for that, Natalie said defensively. I know, he replied. That's the tragedy. He slid the second folder across. A copy of the guardianship termination agreement. Stamped. Filed. A notarized statement declaring the full and final severance of all paternal obligations. At the bottom, one final clause. No financial support shall be expected or provided, past or future, related to the minor dependents known as redacted. Natalie's eyes skimmed it in disbelief. You're just abandoning them. He leaned forward slightly. I'm ending a contract that was never honored. You turn me into a utility. They turn me into a punchline. I don't abandon people. I remove myself when I'm no longer welcome. Natalie gripped the table. They're still your boys, she whispered, almost pleading. They still remember you teaching them to ride bikes. They still. Grant cut her off. Not with volume, but with finality. They remember me as the guy who pays for their life, not the one who built it. He stood, straightened his coat. The envelope remained on the table. As he turned to leave, she called out, So what now? You just walk away and leave me to deal with Derek. He paused at the edge of the booth. Without turning around, he said, Tell your real dad good luck. And then he walked out. Not rushed, not triumphant, just finished. Natalie sat alone in that cracked booth, surrounded by folders that weighed more than they looked. Pages filled with proof of everything she took for granted. Outside, the waitress refilled coffee for an old man doing a crossword. No one cared that a life just ended in the corner booth. No one noticed. But Natalie noticed. For the first time, the silence wasn't just the absence of Grant's voice. It was the absence of his presence, his protection, his patience, his planning. It was the silence of finality. The house felt wrong, like it was being cleared out for auction, not handed over to its next chapter. Boxes lined the hallway. Not neat ones, panicked ones. Torn edges, mismatched tape, some half-stuffed with winter coats and old report cards. Natalie had started throwing things together before she even knew where they were going. Maybe she still didn't. The twins sat at the foot of the stairs, backpacks beside them, eyes darting between the clock and the driveway. Derek was late. Again. Upstairs, a closet door slammed shut. Natalie's footsteps creaked overhead like a metronome of regret. She hadn't said much all morning. A few instructions. Some yelling. A lot of muttering to herself. The boys weren't angry. They were confused. And slowly, quietly embarrassed. This wasn't what they pictured when they said real dad. Real dad was supposed to mean adventure. A little rebellion. Maybe fewer rules and a fridge stocked with junk food. Instead, it meant silence. Cardboard boxes. And a sense that no one really wanted them. They were just being handed off like forgotten luggage. At 10:42 a.m., Derek's truck rolled into the driveway. A dented blue Chevy with rusted fenders and a mismatched passenger door that squeaked when it opened. He stepped out wearing the same jeans he'd worn to his last court appearance. Grease on the shirt, hat low over his eyes. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He didn't even kill the engine. Grab your stuff, he grunted. That was it. The boys exchanged a glance. Hey, one of them said, forcing a tone of casual. It's been a while. Derek didn't respond. Just opened the tailgate and started rearranging half-empty toolboxes to make space. The younger twin shifted his weight. So, where are we going? Derek slammed the tailgate shut. Your mom didn't tell you? He snorted, more bitter than amused. Course not. Trailer's got a spare room. You'll figure it out. Natalie finally emerged, breathless, still clutching a pile of folded laundry. You'll need clean sheets, she said, stuffing them into one of the boxes. And the Wi-Fi passwords taped to the router. Derek cut her off with a look. Not cruel, just tired. You done? He asked. She didn't answer, just stood there, wringing a dish towel in her hands like it might help her hold on to something. The older twin looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, asked, Why'd he leave? Natalie's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She swallowed, then turned away. There was no speech, no justification, no villain to point to, no lie to sell. So she said nothing. The boys carried their bags outside. No fanfare, no hugs, just a slow realization crawling under their skin like frostbite. This was real. This was permanent. As the truck's engine idled, the younger one doubled back. He walked to the old bookshelf in the hallway, the one Grant always told them to leave alone because it had stuff worth keeping. He opened the bottom drawer. Inside, half buried under old manuals and a VHS camcorder, was a photo album. Leather-bound. Worn. He pulled it out. Flipped through the pages. Kindergarten graduation. Grant in a wrinkled shirt, arms around both boys. One of them grinning with cake on his face. The other crying because he lost his shoe, and Grant trying to coax him into smiling for just one picture. Field day. Grant with sunscreen on his nose, holding juice boxes like gold bars. Christmas morning. Grant asleep on the couch with wrapping paper in his lap and a toy train running over his foot. Every page was the same story they'd forgotten how to tell. Someone showed up. Not because he had to, because he chose to. They sat on the stairs with the album between them, saying nothing. No phones. No music. No insults. Just the sound of a pickup truck waiting for two boys who suddenly understood that DNA didn't make you a father, and entitlement didn't make you a son. Sunday morning arrived with a knock. Not the frantic kind. Not fists pounding in rage or surprise. Just two crisp raps on the front door, followed by the sound of tires crunching gravel and driving away. Natalie, bleary-eyed and still in yesterday's clothes, shuffled to the door. The twins were gone. The silence in the house made it feel cavernous. Every creak underfoot echoed too loud. Every shadow looked like something missing. She opened the door and found a plain envelope on the welcome mat. Certified mail. No return address. Just her name, typed cleanly in bold black print. She didn't open it right away. She stared at it, like it might explode. Then she tore it open. Inside, one page. Single-sided. No dramatic cover letter, no extra explanation. Just a plain, brutal summary from the family court. Legal guardianship of redacted has been permanently withdrawn by Grant Whitaker, with no further parental or financial obligations. Custody reverts to biological father, Derek Allen, per Clause 4C of prior guardianship agreement. Additionally, based on the submitted statements, images, and corroborated accounts of negligent supervision, the court will review a formal motion to limit maternal visitation to supervised conditions pending further investigation. Preliminary hearing date to follow. Natalie stared at the last line. Supervised visitation. Her. The woman who called herself the real parent. The one who rolled her eyes every time Grant picked up the slack. The one who laughed when her sons insulted him. The one who thought love meant being owed. She sat down on the couch without realizing it, knees buckling, breath shallow. She read it again. And again. Grant hadn't just walked away. He had ended her narrative. No shouting. No vengeance speeches. Just filings, facts, and a final twist of the knife, using the very system she had ignored. Because Grant didn't raise his voice. He raised consequences. And across the street, a gray sedan sat parked under the shade of a dying maple tree. Grant was in the driver's seat. Engine running. No music. No expression. He didn't watch her crumble. He didn't need to. He already knew. She had mocked his silence for years. But silence wasn't surrender. It was study. Every slight, every insult, every smirk logged. Filed. Prepared. He watched the mailbox flag lower, saw her silhouette through the window holding the letter like it was radioactive. Then he shifted into drive. The car rolled forward. Smooth. Quiet. He didn't look back. Didn't need to. He wasn't driving away from something. He was driving toward peace. Not revenge. Not glory. Just the clean, final triumph of a man who refused to be disposable and made damn sure they'd never forget what he carried before he let it go.